Welcome to the GRN, the Growth and Resilience Network, where every episode brings you targeted stories and strategies about professional and personal growth and resilience. Hi, I'm Steve Piscitelli, your host, coming to you from my headquarters, my world headquarters here in Atlantic Beach, Florida. You know, over the past few years, there has been a lot written about resilience and grit. A lot. I did a quick internet search this morning of the word resilience. More than 56 million hits. The topic resonates and it can become lost in all the noise. So today, we're going to add to the conversation and hopefully, rather than add to the noise, we're going to add some insights and understanding. And specifically, my guest today takes a look at resilience as it relates to middle school students. The 6th, the 7th, the 8th grade students. Now, how do we help them reflect and grow when it comes to experiences, for instance, with failure, or with bullying, or dealing with social media, or simply the trials and tribulations of early adolescence? And what role do parents and teachers play? So today we're fortunate to have an educator, an author, and a middle school teacher, John Meeks, with me in the studio. A few things about John before I turn it over to him. He's a graduate of Orange Park High School here in Florida and the University of North Florida. He's an Air Force veteran, and he worked in aerospace medicine. That just sounds smart. My gosh. He has been teaching social studies in the Duval County Public Schools since 2002. And I mentioned author. He does have a book, his most recent book, Believe, Metaphysics for a New Generation. So welcome, John Louis Meeks, Jr. to the studio. We are glad you've taken time, especially on your spring break, to join us today. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
And it's great to have you. So let's kind of set this context. You teach primarily 6th graders, or is that correct? Or do you do 6th, 7th, and 8th?
I teach 6th and 7th grade, yes.
6th and 7th grade. All right. And I think you would agree with, that when it comes to teaching, it's so much more than the academics. The academics are important, obviously. Very important. However, these students bring so much to the classroom, challenges as well as the talents and the skills they do have. They need a new toolbox, especially 6th graders.
Indeed, yes.
Indeed, right? So tell us a little bit about this toolbox that they need. Tell us a little bit about how teachers can be models for resilience, how they can advocate for the students, connect, validate, whatever it is that you do and you do so well.
Well, I think 6th grade has a special need when dealing with resilience. I know it's a buzzword as of late in education, teaching people resilience, and I think one thing that teachers have a difficulty grasping is how to instill it or at least expose it among our young people. Mm-hmm. It's within us. This reminds me of a saying that I'd seen about this moment right now. This moment right now, if we're here, we have survived this far. And same when you're leaving elementary school. That moment entering middle school, you have survived that far. The next step is crossing the bridge over to the next phase in your life. As a teacher of 6th grade, I've noticed that parental involvement tends to, I don't want to sound negative or derogatory, but when parents release their children to quote-unquote middle school, transition, the assumption is that they want them to transition to independence. So it's a very difficult, by the parents and the teachers too in many cases, the assumption that it's time for us to let go and have them move on towards becoming independent and to let go. That's where the transition comes. You're sort of taking the training wheels off the bicycle, and you see them toddling along. And the question is, when do you go in there and help them up, and when do you let them, struggle? Mm-hmm. But not too much.
Struggle with failure.
Yes.
struggle with identity, who they are, I would
Right.
assume, right? In sixth grade.
Yes. And I think it's when you have the reality of we all want to have easier lives, but we know that's not possible because life throws all sorts of things at us. But the challenge is to be stronger people to withstand those challenges that come at us.
Mm-hmm.
And middle school is particularly unique where you're entering a school where there's kids from various elementary schools feeding into that, and you're finding new social circles, a whole new set of teachers. You have 5 or 6 teachers a day. And you're dealing with, of course, your own internal changes because middle school is a time where the kids enter puberty and go through hormonal changes, physical changes, spiritual, mental, you name it.
All the dimensions of life. Now, the challenges do you think, does your experience show that the challenges that these students have in experience actually become fertilizer for agents for developing resilience, so that if they have failed and survived, they've made it this far.
Yes.
And if they fail again and survive,
Yes.
and if and when they have those great achievements as a sixth grader, maybe it's as I had the honor to be a judge at your school's Mayport. Is it Mayport Middle School now? What's the official name?
Well, the full name is Mayport Coastal Sciences Middle School.
Okay.
Yes.
And I had the honor to be a judge at one of your student fairs, the history fair. And I think for some of those students, when they reach that, that's a pretty big thing for them at that stage in their life.
Yes.
Do you find that adds to their resilience as well, the successes and the stumbles?
Oh, absolutely. When a child sees what they're capable of doing, that's one joy of middle school and junior high school. I remember joining clubs and having activities and having sports and various offerings, so we had a chance to see where we could shine inside and outside the classroom. So you see that sense of satisfaction on the students' faces when they know they had a project that was fantastic and showcased what effort they put into it.
I love it.
Yes.
Love it. I'm a sixth grader. And I've had, for me, as a sixth grader, a traumatic experience. It could be that I've just been snubbed by someone I thought was my best friend. It could be that I failed a math quiz. It could be that my daddy left home.
Yes.
And it could be because he deployed, which you have a number of students whose families are Navy families.
Oh, very common occurrence,
Yeah.
deployments, yeah.
Or maybe daddy or mommy they've left the home not for work purposes, but there's a divorce pending.
Yes.
How does that come to your attention as a teacher? Does the sixth grader come in and say, Mr. Meeks, my parents are getting divorced. Mr. Meeks, I've just been bullied. Or is it more subtle?
It ranges. It depends on how open the student is with you. With resilience, I believe, it ranges from, like you say, it could be a student didn't let me sit down at lunch with them. I've had an extreme case where one student lost both of their parents within the span of days.
Lost? You mean they both died?
They both died within days of each other. And let's go back to the toolbox concept. Every sixth grader, I have the feeling, me included, entered sixth grade thinking that this is the first person making that leap across this chasm into middle school.
Yeah, nobody's ever done it.
Nobody's ever done it, so what do I do? Yeah. It's important to know that adults around them assure them that they're there for them for the transition of that change. We have a great summer camp at our school, which is a transition camp for sixth graders coming in to know what to expect, so that when you step in, it's not an alien land. It has some familiarity. It's sort of like college tours before people go to college.
Yeah,
get a sense of the campus and the culture and the process is something as simple as knowing where to put your books on A days and B days, and advice on. Well, back when we had lockers, and all the various logistics.
Right.
So once you start, you have that sense of confidence. And in those beginning days, we let them know who to talk to. I tell the students, I say, bullying, of course, is something we all encounter. I can't promise you're not going to encounter it, but if you do, please let an adult know. It could be me, but find that one anchor in the building that you can confide in and share with.
I'm hearing in you, John, when you state that, and pardon me for the interruption here, but I'm hearing that what will help a student's resilience, a sixth grader we're talking about.
Yes.
One of the things that's needed in that toolbox in this new environment is a validating relationship, a trusting relationship with a teacher. So we all know from our own personal experience as students, and also as educators, when you look around your building, your city, or the nation, that some teachers are really good with that, and others struggle with that.
Yes.
Right? So it's really a two-part question. First part is, the question I had written down here was, what do our students need more than anything else to develop resilience? And so to add to that, do they need more than anything else that trusting face, that teacher in the front who is the one who will hold them accountable?
Yes.
And at the same time, give them, if not a physical, a metaphorical hug to help them through a difficult time.
Yes. The assumption is, even when I was younger, I thought that I didn't even know what the word was, but I knew the concept, at least abstractly. My assumption was that, people are born with that. And if you don't have it, oh well. I've learned, though, as a teacher, as an educator, that developing resilience is something that can be fostered and scaffolded. And like I say, it varies. You might have a child that enters middle school. They may have had maybe older brothers or sisters that help them understand what to expect, or they just are more of an extrovert and are just used to changes and shifts. So that they won't all need that, but it's there for them in case. Because maybe something happens, like you say, in sixth grade. The most confident child has a trauma or a change or an event in their life that makes them need someone to reach out to.
Right. Are faculty trained in this area? Are faculty, you're trained in the content of social studies, in your case, or science or English, math, whatever it might be. You are trained in methodology. You're trained in assessment. You have school things you're trained in. What time the bell schedules, the bells will ring, so you have to have them in lunch at this time and back here at this time, to the buses. You're trained in all of that.
Yes.
Are you trained in resilience? How to foster resilience in your students?
I think the most relevant training I've had recently was this past summer, before this present school year, when I attended mental health first aid. Mental health first aid. Yes.
Okay.
Where we were trained by how to deal with cases which do challenge mental health for children. They're not always going to be in their desks and ready to learn 100%. There's going to be distractions, there's going to be traumas, and we want to be able to best serve them in the classroom. So the only thing I have to worry about is their lesson as opposed to their traumas. And I'm very, very fond of our guidance department at our school, because they're very helpful with helping us to find the right assistance for them.
Right.
And they'll meet with them confidentially.
So it's connecting them with resources.
Yes.
Connecting them. And you're a resource, the counselor's a resource, but there are community resources.
Yes, like the Beaches Resource Center that we have in our area. It does a yeoman's job of helping us reach the whole child outside the classroom. If there is a family issue or a home life issue, they can address that.
Yeah, I've talked when I'm working with groups and audiences, and we talk about the importance of relationships, but especially for teachers, the importance of understanding and knowing the resources, because faculty, for the most part, faculty have not been trained to be counselors. You have been trained in your area.
Yes.
Still, having said that, your students bring in issues that can very much benefit from trained counselors. So somehow there has to be a way for the faculty to understand here are resources A through Z, so that when my student has an issue, I don't have to solve the issue, but I have to at least recognize the issue and then make a connection student to at least initial resource.
Yes.
Is that do you go along with that train of thought?
I do, yes.
Okay. And are faculty trained in that? Like you went to this workshop.
Yes.
John Meeks did. But is that a part of training for faculty that you've seen over your now 15 plus years in the classroom?
As of late, more teachers are getting involved in mental health first aid. That's a class I know the district is making more available to teachers to better address their students' needs and respond to their students' needs too.
Are the students watching the teachers? If you tell me, oh, Steve, you didn't do well on that test, that you don't have to cry and it's okay and everybody fails, just, keep a stiff upper lip. And then I turn around and I see you have a temper tantrum about something.
Right.
I mean, are your students watching that, the sixth graders? Do they get that?
I think what they get in my classroom is I try to keep a keen eye towards, like you say, a student crying. I'll say, would you like to step outside and we talk about this quietly? Or you may have a student who they sit normally with a group of students, and then one day they're sitting by themselves. The first question I ask is, hey, just checked in to see everything's okay, so they're not being ostracized.
Gotcha.
They're away for a reason.
You're being vigilant.
Yes, you have to be.
Again, it's more than did Stevie show up in class on time. It's these other things that you're mentioning. You're looking for that something that's a little maybe out of whack.
They might have their head down in class, or they might be unusually quiet. Like I had one girl who was very talkative, very social, very friendly. Then one day she was very quiet and just seemed rather unusual for a couple of days, that she was out of character. Then I asked her what was up, and she explained to me that her family had some job issues and they hadn't eaten, consistently.
Wow.
And thankfully for the guidance office, we had like some things down there that she could have that morning, and we had a little, I'd say a food bank, so to speak, of sundry items we donated in case kids went without for breakfast.
Have you found in your experiences, life experiences as well as an educator, teacher, does race or ethnicity play out in resiliency at all? Or does it make a darn bit of difference what my race is, what my ethnicity is, what my socioeconomic background is? There's a commonality right across. Or do you find that it does make a difference? Not the glaring example, the one-off, but over time you say, yeah, this group of students either struggles more or thrives more. Have you found anything like that in your experiences?
I think it's more of a class issue.
Class.
Dealing with resistance, yeah, socioeconomic, social class. The resources available to someone in life. Internet access, they call it the digital divide, where technology is playing such a bigger role in education. You're sort of at a disadvantage if you live in a household that does not have access to the internet. And
Are you finding that that's a case even in 2017?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Which I'm not surprised, because I remember in the 1980s, I had classmates in junior high school that didn't have a landline phone, and this was like maybe 87, 88.
And that was prior to cell phone technology.
Exactly, yeah. So they were completely disconnected. They were out of the loop.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right these days. It seems surprising that there'd be people without technology at home. But then again, the presumption is that everyone has this technology because it's there. But the price, I guess, is the biggest question.
Do we, the parents' role, do we need to do training for parents when it comes to resiliency? do parents need to do training for us in the classroom? And again, I know there are examples on all sides of this issue, but what has your experience been, your experiences when it comes to the parent's role in the resiliency of the child? Because, I mean, they're the model that kids are living with.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the district has a parent academy, which has useful...
Parent academy. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, right now, Duval County Public Schools has an academy which teaches parents the ins and outs of schools. Like, I know that they train them on, well, I wouldn't say train, but they help them with, I can't think of the ends, how do you say that? With the testing, for example. We had a practice PSAT test, and we had a PSAT parent night where the students saw what the PSAT was about. The testing, the lingo, because of course, in education, there's all sorts of acronyms and things like that.
Yeah, right. The jargon.
That's the big jargon. And also educational technology. If I'm not mistaken, they do teach them the same software they teach students, so they understand what technology they're using, and also how to use the online software to access their child's grades. It's a godsend, I think, the focus program, because it gives parents and families real-time access to their children's grades.
All right, so you've got these resources for academics, pieces of the academic structure. Is there training or workshops, whatever you want to call it, meetings, academies for parents to talk about resiliency, to talk about helping your children leap back from adversity, handle adversity in a healthy way? Is there anything done like that?
Not that I know of. No, not that I know of.
Okay. Empathy. And there are various types of it, but this, the general view of, I look into your eyes and either I can feel what you're feeling, I can sense what you're feeling, I think I see something, or I'm totally oblivious. Sixth graders, generally speaking, when it comes to, on an empathy scale, from zip to they're off the charts, they're so empathetic with people around them. What do you see with that? Do they come in with this skill of empathy, with this trait, the empathetic trait?
I think sixth graders have the great advantage of having a great sense of empathy. I've
Really?
noticed
Wow.
that as they come in, they are very eager to serve, very eager to help around the classroom. Because I guess they're feeling the way through school, but there's a great sense of connection. And compassion among sixth graders. And they can sense it in their teachers sometimes, too.
Interesting.
That
Encouraging.
Encouraging, very, yes.
Yeah. What about social media? Have you found? Are your sixth graders connected?
Yes.
I mean, are your sixth graders?
Yes.
A typical class size is what for you, John?
I'd say about
Average.
23, 24 sixth graders in the classroom.
Okay. So you've got, let's just say 25. We'll boost it up a little bit.
Right.
Of the 25 sitting in your classroom, how many would you say have cell phones?
I'd say maybe even half, at least half.
At least half. Okay.
Yes.
And they have them at school?
They can have them at school. It's tricky there. Some classrooms allow them to use their phones to research in the classroom if they're researching for an assignment. Some require them to keep them put away the entire class period. So
Right.
it depends.
Right. Have you found, do you hear from the students or other teachers, the use of the cell phones, the social media helps resilience, helps empathy, dashes empathy?
Well, it helps resilience. It helps empathy, especially with resilience and how you stay connected.
Okay.
The challenge that I had growing up in Navy Town here, Orange Park, a lot of my friends left town, was that when they left, sometimes it was like they went off the edge of the earth.
Right. That's an interesting point.
And these days, I notice when children move, they can use social media to still stay connected. And their circle is not as damaged. And that's a big test of resilience, to deal with those kind of moves and transitions among your friends in your social circle. So they're managed to develop resilience simply by having greater access through technology.
So the circle is somewhat broken.
Somewhat.
But as you said, it's not as damaged.
Yes.
And they're able to stay connected. The connection is an important piece
Yes.
of resilience that you've found. That's an interesting piece that sometimes maybe we don't hear enough about or hear much about. Have you found much in the way of cyberbullying?
Yes, quite a bit. And I think our school system is doing a fairly good job of helping parents and families and students work together to address cyberbullying. We've had situations where it's quashed pretty fast because of communications. Everybody stays vigilant. And the harm that's caused among the kids is limited as soon as it's addressed, as opposed to letting it fester and fester and get worse.
Yeah, for those circumstances involved. That you know about.
Right, for those that I know about, yes.
Yeah. Does that become a learning experience for the whole class if you were with protecting identities and the like? But if you found out that, again, I was cyberbullied and it had a devastating effect, is that brought up almost in real time with students? Pretty
much. Like if I'm aware of it, I immediately report it to the proper people at the school to moving forward. So that way, like I say, I want to really preserve our ability to teach and learn in the classroom. And the faster we address that, the more we can be focused on the job of learning. I think it's also best serves the family too. I mean, I always fear having a situation blow up and the first thing the child says was, well, I told my teacher and he didn't do anything about it. You know, I told Mr. Meeks and he just brushed it off.
And that comes up sometimes.
I think, well, to be in the sake of being proactive, I don't want to be the one that turns to the evening news and says,
right,
something could have been done.
Yeah, right. I gotcha. Yeah. Interesting. What question have I not asked about this topic that you want to make sure?
Oh, are you being heard? Yes.
Talk about that.
The beginning of the school year, and this was a student that was having a tougher time with transitioning to middle school. He's a shorter child. And it was brought to my attention he was upset a couple of days, the first few days of school. And I sort of saw a lot in common between the both of us. I was about the same height as he was. We were both relatively introverted. And he was working these group projects with groups of students and his peers. And anytime they grouped up to do their work, anytime he tried to chip in, they wouldn't listen to him. And he was at the verge of tears, actually crying, saying, you know, nobody's listening to me. The guidance counselor got me involved, and we worked going forward. And from time to time, I would check in and ask him. I'd stop and say, look, are you being heard today? Do you feel? It was like a sense of validation for him. As the year progressed, he began to speak out more, and every time I asked him, he began to answer yes, affirmatively, yes, I'm being heard. Resilience, like I said, it's something that when we develop it as a child and build it, you're not a failure for not automatically having it together the first day.
Yeah, and I think when we have talked earlier, because we've known each other now for years, but the idea with anyone, but we're talking middle schoolers today, do we build or do we mend?
Yes.
And early on, it sounds like what John Louis Meeks is about in the classroom. It's helping to build these children, but you also seem to recognize that some need mending, and they probably all need mending at some point during the school year.
Right.
And the mending depends on the person, depends on the circumstances and the like. And it sounds like, again, if I'm in your classroom, you're paying attention.
Yes.
You don't have all the answers.
No.
You're paying attention. You are hearing me even when I'm not talking. Because what you are not saying speaks louder, sometimes, it's what you do as opposed to the words that you say. And so you're watching actions.
Yes.
And again, inaction. If I was always extroverted and now I'm nothing.
Yes.
There's something going on. You're, again, vigilant. There's a lot in that for teachers that a lot of times I don't know if teachers get their due credit for that. If credit is the correct word, but at least recognition that it is more than preparing for a statewide test.
Yes.
Or an end of curriculum test or an end of year test. Again, we know those are hoops that have to be jumped through. Teachers have to be so much more.
Yes.
And you've proven that. You continue to do that. Let's finish up with this. I always like to finish with a call to action for people. So whether the listener today is a teacher or not, okay, they come across young children that it could be the neighbor's kid, it could be their niece, their nephew, it could be their own child. What does John Meeks see as the top three things that we can do to help our children grow their resilience?
To help young people grow their resilience, I think back to when I was doing the research on the American Psychological Association saying that resilience is the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trial, and even tragedy. For the call to action, the first step is to connect. It could be a family member, it could be a trusted teacher, it could be a friend to buddy with and share and let your feelings out and take time to reflect, good and bad. Vent, find someone you can trust to help you go through those experiences, to help you make it through the day instead of bottling things up. I think the second thing is, besides connecting with people, is to connect with yourself, to check in with yourself from time to time and understand that these challenges that you're facing are not insurmountable. There's always the next day. There's a sense of urgency in middle school that, oh no, the world has come to an end today if it doesn't happen, and anxiety runs very high. And the past 14, 15 years of teaching, a running theme of my talks with students is, 20 years from now, will this be a crisis to you? 5 days from now, will this be a crisis for you?
By the end of lunch, will it be a crisis?
Exactly.
Yeah. And it could very well be.
It could
not minimizing it.
That's true.
You're at least getting them to step back, it sounds like, and just do some sort of a reflection.
Yes.
An evaluation here.
But you're right. A sense of proportionality helps get us through there. And even to know that you'll get through it.
Yeah.
That's the key to resilience.
That you will get through it.
And sometimes you've got to face your feelings. I have cases, like just recently I had a student who had, of course, boy trouble, she did, and she was crying. And I said, go ahead and cry. Cry it out. I mean, you're going through grieving, and I explained that grieving is not always over death. Grieving can be over a significant loss you're experiencing. And if you don't get it out now, you'll probably be expressing it in ways you don't want to. Yeah.
So connect with people, connect with yourself.
Yes, and don't forget to take care of yourself also. Burnout can happen in any age. And while we want our kids to make 4.0 grade point averages, self-care matters. We have to model that for our kids. It develops a life habit so where later on in life they don't feel like they're having to wait for a health crisis to take good care of themselves.
Yeah. All right. So if I go back just to make sure we've got these bullet points here, and there's so many sub points and the good points that you've raised. But it's connect with people. If we're talking about growing resilience, it's connect with people, connect with yourself, understand what I am feeling, how I'm processing it, and that there is a sense. I think your word was a sense of proportionality.
Yes.
As opposed to immediacy.
Yes.
Face my feelings, which would be part of that connecting with myself. And then that last piece was, okay, I've checked in with myself. What am I doing to care for myself? And by caring for myself, how do I also encourage the people around me to care for themselves, and especially young children, they're watching.
Yes.
They're watching how Mr. Meeks cares for himself, from the way you dress, the way you talk, the way you interact with your colleagues, the way you are behaving when you think nobody's looking, because they're looking.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's all part of the education process, the resiliency process.
And I think a big key to resilience, too, is Desiderata, that poem. And there's a point in the poem where it talks about you have the right to be here. And that's at the heart of resilience, is that we're asserting ourselves as autonomous individuals who have the right to enjoy the same life as everybody else, and the same happiness and the same natural rights that we all have as individuals, and to not have to apologize for yourself or shrink away from something or shut down when something negative happens.
And I think on that powerful note, we're going to end this, John. Thanks for joining us today on your spring break, during your spring break. And I thank you, listeners, for joining us today. Without you, there is no Growth and Resilience Network. I thank you for sharing our podcast with family, friends, colleagues, and community leaders. I mean, a podcast like this one with John today, pass it along to educators in your community. Pass it along to school board members. And if you have a few moments, please consider posting a review on iTunes. Visit my website, stevepiscitelli.com, for more information about upcoming conversations on the GRN and about my programs and other resources for your personal growth and resilience. And for you teachers out there, you might want to check out my new book. Came out January 1st of 2017, Stories About Teaching, Learning, and Resilience, No Need to Be an Island. John didn't use that phraseology, but what he spoke to today is that we need to collaborate. We need to be collegial for not only ourselves, but for our students. And there is no need to be an island. And while at my website, I've made it very easy for you to sign up for my email and newsletter list, and I promise I will never spam you. So until we meet again, either virtually or somewhere in person around this great nation, this is Steve Piscitelli from my world headquarters here in Atlantic Beach, Florida, reminding all of us to choose well, live well, and be well. Bye-bye, folks.